wanted to focus this conversation today on kind of the current affairs and current state of the general economy, and also in context of usability and user experience. So as an kind of an opening statement to this, I'm just going to read some notes that I prepared to kickstart the conversation and set some context. Optimistic startups in the Web3 ecosystem are trying to build technology to improve self-custody, security, and privacy of digital assets. But the UX of TradFi startups is actually flawless, and nobody really is looking for new solutions, at least in the mass market. To make matters worse, the recent FTX disaster could contribute to a decline in public trust in Web3 development, while central banks craft powerful narratives to introduce digital currencies to the public. The issuance of these currencies would remain centralized and the policies uncertain. Experience design lies at the intersection of human behavior and technology. So I'm pretty excited to share this moment with the experts in UX from the Web3 ecosystem. So with me here are 4 people with very different backgrounds, but all somehow related and somehow experienced in UX. We have Roman, who started as a front-end developer and went into project management. And since 2020, he worked at Argent Wallet and recently started his own startup called Wido, W-I-D-O, which basically creates something similar to Zapier for transactions. So it's like single-click transactions that make it a lot easier to execute transactions. We have Vanina, who's the CMO of Empire Wallet. She went from advertisement models in Web 2 to Web 3 and learned a lot about how people actually operate how they operate with the advertisement industry in Web 2, but then how that might apply or not apply to Web 3 and what people essentially need. We have Justina, who's an independent user researcher and consultant and a workshop facilitator. She worked on over 20 projects for Deep Work Studio, but also probably over 30 or about 40 different projects in this space. She has a lot of experience in user research, and that's what her core focus is on advising teams on. And we have Sakky, who's the co-founder of the studio called 02 Design. He has 6 years of design experience in TradFi, real estate, and B2B software as a service companies. So there's a lot of different backgrounds and a lot of experiences. And I'm very curious kind of to learn about your perception of what's going on and kind of use this opportunity and this relatively short time span of 40 minutes to make sense of what's going on and potentially give teams, startups, but also individuals a sense of an idea of how to progress and how to kind of evolve the ecosystem. So maybe let me start with Roman, because you have kind of a background with kind of working on Argent Wallet and you have your own startup. What do you think is necessary to kind of close the gap between the traditional finance ecosystem and the Web3 UX and Web3 in general?
Hi, everyone. Excited to be here. Thanks for the introduction, Andrej. So first of all, I think to close the bar between TradFi and DeFi, we need to fix the table stakes. And that means getting rid of seed phrases. Seed phrases, and I know they are doing a good job, and I'm biased about that as well. Seed phrases just don't make sense. Like, we can't expect people to remember seed phrases. And Vanina was just telling me yesterday that
my housekeeper threw away a seed phrase of mine. That was, it wasn't. I see people terrified. No, it wasn't like a huge wallet. I didn't lose a lot of money, but it still hurt. I just think of it as the price I had to pay for learning that lesson.
Yeah, so we can expect a lot like this if we ask people to remember their seed phrases. So we need to get rid of that. We need to get rid of specialized hardware wallets. We need to go mobile first. I think the next bull market is going to be mobile first. I don't think we should expect people to use their laptops to access DeFi. Unlimited approvals, single-click transactions, which is something we're trying to solve at Wido. Those are the table stakes. But I don't think that's going to be enough. When I ask my traditional finance friends what's wrong with TradFi, most of them say, like, TradFi is great. I can pay my friends very quickly. I get my salary in. I can pay everywhere. Like, nothing is wrong with TradFi. And they are right. Like, TradFi is pretty good. The UX there is good. When I think about DeFi, on the other hand, most of it is arguably speculation. When I ask DeFi people, why are you in DeFi, there are two reasons that I hear. Either technology, experimentation, or speculation. And that's not enough. Like, we need to build from first principles, and we need to build something that is going to be 10 times more valuable than traditional finance. Because meeting the bar of TradFi is just not enough. TradFi is good. So there needs to be something that convinces people to switch to DeFi. And that is what makes me excited, because I think there is a tremendous opportunity in trustless systems. It could be another question, like how do we design for trustless and how do we explain trustless? But there is a lot of value in that, and I think that's where the DeFi can stand out. That makes me excited. Coinbase was recently running an ad in Wall Street Journal, I think last week. It was titled, "It's time to upgrade." It was actually titled "Trust Us," but the key point was it's time to upgrade the systems. And I think they were talking about upgrading from trusted to trustless. So that, in my mind, is the 10x value in DeFi, but it's going to be a long journey to get there and to make people understand what trustless actually is about.
How would you describe it? Like, what trustless? Like, what does trustless mean in practice?
You don't need to trust some Bankman-Fried that your money is not going to be stolen. There is an autonomous system, a piece of code running, i.e. on Ethereum, and it's just going to behave the way it's described in the code. So it can't misbehave.
Right. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. Thank you so much.
If you just allow me to add to that, if I had to just describe trustless to normies and even to people in crypto, I would say you own your money, and if you lose it, it's because you're dumb, and it's on you. You should just take, like, it's the way of taking responsibility and enjoying all the freedom that comes with that.
Right. Right. Yeah, interesting. I wonder, Sakky, because you have you're basically running a studio and work a lot with clients as well. What do you think in that regard? What would be a way to kind of think about UX in that way as a technical team? Like, how would you recommend them to utilize these principles?
Yeah, I think Roman, you mentioned a really interesting point on alternative from TradFi to DeFi. I don't know if I necessarily agree that it needs to be looked at as you're switching, because I think it could be like you have both and you get something different. You get a different piece of value out of a DeFi platform and what you get out of traditional finance platforms. I think TikTok did a very good example of this, rather than competing as we are completely new and we want you to move away from Instagram type of approach. They said, we know what Instagram is. We know that it's going to take a lot of time for people to switch. And so they actually integrated with it. Like when you go onto a TikTok profile, you have the opportunity to add your YouTube or your Instagram platform. So they didn't necessarily say, like, directly we're competing. They looked at it as the journey that people have is going to be hard to completely move them over. So let's start by being alongside them. I think it's probably an important approach and an important lesson that DeFi platforms can take, because the communication that you have with centralized finance is very clear. People have pumped lots of money into Coinbase, into FTX, into Binance, because they understand it. It feels familiar. It's kind of like TradFi, whereas DeFi is completely on the other side. And then there's a huge gap because they, I think, in part want to be different, but I think it's because they want to move people completely over, which might be too big a hurdle, because with new tech, it's always going to take a bit of time. So I think it's about taking like an adjacent approach rather than saying we're going to completely move people over from this existing thing to a new thing. We're going to say, we know that this other thing exists. We're going to try to communicate our value as slightly different, but not be unrealistic and think people are going to completely move everything, all their money over day one. Like that may happen, and you could say that you'd like it to happen, but that's not going to happen at day one. And I think as builders and as experienced designers, once you know that, you can tailor the experience to be more realistic, and like your message can be more realistic to saying, we're not completely moving you away, but here's an alternative that we think is better. Tell me why.
So you would kind of take a step-by-step approach and like
Yeah.
slowly
Yeah,
handle
exactly. Yeah.
users.
I think the interesting thing is now, like, you have great products that can blow up and people love that viral effect. But changing behavior with money, like the most like polarizing topic in life, that's not going to happen like as a viral hit. You had like mobile banking and neobanks come out in the UK, and the adoption from 2016, 2015 when they launched was great, but it wasn't like millions of people from day one started using it. Millions of people use it now, like 5-6 years later. But at the beginning, it was those people that were like, oh, this is cool. And I don't think Monzo, for example, ever framed it as, okay, cool, this is completely different. It's like they messaged it as this is better. But you have to just be like pragmatic that these other things exist right now. You're not going to get people to transition over with money day one. It will take time. So yeah, phases for sure, and just like a sprinkle of pragmatism.
Yeah, and I have something to add also, that I think like using similar patterns, like similar design patterns, what we have in a TradeFi, what we have in neobanks, I think it could really help and just help like actually bring new users, but at the same time just focus on one user group at a time and just like target experience specifically for them and educate them on self-custody, educate them on like decentralization, but in gradual manner, versus just like taking them completely away and saying that's our truth and that's what you need to follow. Just all these concepts that what you need to understand, which includes terminology, which includes like so many like this Web3 specific things, what they are not exposed to in that particular moment. And just like basically growing a new generation of Web3 users, growing just new generation of people who care about decentralization, but not because somebody told them to do, but they actually understand what it means.
And yeah,
If I may just build up on what Justina just said, I tend to disagree slightly with what you said, because we have been trying, like we have had this approach of teaching people, trying to educate people about blockchain and the processes and how it works for years and years now. And then we don't see the adoption and we wonder whether the adoption is, well, excuse my language, but no shit, Sherlock. I think it's more important for us to build products that eliminate the need for education. So instead of, when you go to the bank and you want to make a bank transfer, you don't ask the clerk at the bank what happens with your money, right? You don't need to know how is your money routed, what's a correspondent bank, what is a PIN sponsor, yada, yada, yada. You don't know these things. You go to the bank, you tell the clerk, I want this amount of money to be sent from this account to that account, right? And it's done. And I think that it is our responsibility as builders in the space to create products that create the same user journey at the end of the day. We need to make sure that people can do what they want to do without having to struggle with the complexity of it. We need to handle the complexity under the hood and package it in a user experience that is smooth and that is flawless and that makes sure that people are as protected as they could be.
right. So education, not in a sense of like online course and like here's exactly how you do it, but like kind of more passively offering them what they would like to do anyway, but like making it as easy as possible and frictionless as possible, right?
Absolutely, exactly. We should just be borrowing all the concepts and like the principles from Web 2 and TradFi and seeing what's the way to adapt this to Web 3.
How would you find concepts and principles from Web 2? So how would you actually get to these core?
Well, let's just circle back to what we started with, seed phrases and how amazingly awful they are and how hard they are to keep. As you already know, I'm speaking from experience. What we did with Empire Wallet was sit down and figure out a way to enable people to sign up with email and password. And of course, yeah, that's not like, it's not a super huge technological challenge, but when you combine it with the factor of security, how do you enable people to sign up for a crypto wallet with an email and password only and a magic link afterwards, and keep them secure at the same time, make sure that they're not compromised? This is where the challenge kicks in. And it took us a while, but we figured it out. At the end of the day, we kind of like, in our particular case, without going into too many details, it's a multi-signature type of structure that makes sure that the user is as protected as they could be. It's not 100% foolproof. There are still scenarios where users can get compromised, but this is the closest that we can get in this particular case. And it's a good enough solution that combines both achieving the end result and having a smooth UX for the user.
And just actually other angle on this, on your question of like how to find out these patterns, that I believe just by asking a user and just actually like doing interviews and just like doing like a very small user studies and just like asking them what they like about the TradeFi experience, what they like about the neobanks, and then just like doing this competitive analysis and just finding out the main features that they actually believe that this like brings value to them, and then trying to transfer these to your products, to Web3 products. Like it could be valuable and just like low touch solution that you don't need a lot of resources for that, but you need consistency, which is like essential part.
Well, on this, I could not agree more with you. I absolutely agree that we need to ask the users, because at the end of the day, yes, we, the people in the Web3 space, are super into it. Like, we're power users, and we have a slightly different model of using than so-called normies, for example, or somebody who's just getting started with their journey in crypto. So we need to be talking to people. We need to be asking people. And I know that user research is often incredibly expensive, and it takes a lot of time and effort. And a lot of projects can't really afford that. But it is my experience, and it is my firm belief, that user testing is crucial when trying to disrupt an entire industry. And that's where we should be starting from. We should be starting from not the way we use it, because the way we think people use it is usually not the way they actually use it.
Right.
So we should always go to the source and observe and monitor and ask people, hey, what is the one thing that you do with your crypto wallet?
Nice.
Do you use it to keep your money? Do you use it to send money? Do you use it to sign into the metaverse or whatever? So this is where we need to get started from. Like, what's the main usage? How people, why people need a crypto wallet, for example, or any other Web3 product in the first place, and take it from there on. Start building from there on. And yeah, as I said, it's expensive. It takes a lot of effort and a lot of coordination. But I think that this is a building block of what we're doing, and we really have to invest in that. We have to make sure that we know what our potential users want.
Yeah, actually, to something to add on this, that like actually like there's a thing on what we're working on now at the moment, just like to provide the educational resources for developers and for teams to do their own research, and just like a small user studies that they don't need to have a researcher or even UX designer in house, but they are able to do these things on their own. And basically, we're building a repository of information, of resources that they can learn. And also myself, I'm educating different engineers and like various mostly DeFi teams, and just like helping them to understand the value of research, and also what is like the smallest thing that they can do that provides value for their company.
I'm actually curious about Sakky's experience in that particular regard, because you're also working probably with technical teams a lot, right? How do you communicate that to technical people in an environment where UX is not really, or like largely overlooked, and research?
Yeah, you want to be empathetic, because technical people are going to want to dive into it. I think that's one of the things that oftentimes designers don't do well enough, is actually empathize with their own teams. They'll be great at empathizing with users, but then when they come to their team, they're not communicating and bringing people on board to then build out the product and the experience that you'd like. The user research one, I'll say one thing. I don't think it has to be expensive. Like, traditional Web2 user research is really expensive. Like, usertesting.com is like £50,000 for a minimum sign up. That's a lot of money. Most people can't afford that. The really interesting thing now with communities that you have with Web3, you've got Discord, you've got Twitter. Elon did a poll yesterday, right, about Trump. He got 10 million votes. It's just going to keep blowing up. The engagement you can get is actually insane because user research now doesn't have to be this arduous, long process to go through and bring people in and do X, Y, and Z. You could drop a poll.
Sign contracts and NDAs.
It's absolutely insane. Like you could drop a
love
poll
it.
and like it can actually be statistically significant as well. That is like if I had that 5 years ago when I was working in traditional finance, I would have jumped at that idea because we spent like 6 weeks trying to speak to people, and now you see a community that literally just drops a poll and they get 6,000 people reply, and I'm like, wow, you can actually make product decisions like that. Right. Because you don't have to wait so long, you can iterate faster and so on. So there's so many different ways you can approach it now, and you just want to be open to it because it is a new space. And I'm like very, very excited by that. I just want to get my hands on it and be like, wow, imagine being user research like a poll away. That is, because sometimes you just want to drop a Google form and then it's very difficult. The other thing that I'll say from this conversation and with technical people as well is there's something called service expectations in service design. You typically have one end of the scale, which is called universal expectation. Everyone knows about it. And you have something on the other side called outlier expectations, which is most people won't expect it. And when you provide it to them, they might be surprised, enjoy it, etc., or scared. Now, the really interesting thing with what we have with Web3 is tech products as a whole are so mature today. So then the expectation that people have is of incredible experiences like we have with traditional finance. And yet Web3 as an industry is so immature that then there's a huge gap. So people might go in thinking seed phrases, this, that, and the other, but they're not universal expectations yet. The things that we've built up over a number of years with traditional finance, like a credit card, we all understand it because we understand the concept of credit. But if you're bringing that out 20 years ago or whenever it was starting to get more digitized, then it's like you might have to explain how the credit function works, right? It's not a universal expectation with some parts of Web3 right now, and that's just going to take a bit of time. And so you have to be mindful of the experience. So I think you're going to go through a phase where it's going to be kind of like growing pains and it's going to be a bit convoluted. You're going to have to educate people in these unideal ways that traditional existing Web2 products don't, because their universal expectations have been set, but ours haven't. And then you have to adapt to that. So I think it's going to suck for a little bit of time, and then it's just about like slowly iterating, growing, and improving. Like when you had social media platforms, you remember what they all used to look like on desktop. They were old and took on what Windows Explorer and Mac was. And then now you have incredible apps. That didn't happen over 2 years. That happened over 10.
Roman, you had also kind of experience from inside of a company, like you started it. Do you have a perspective or any experience that you can share on, how you approach user research within the organization or like within your team?
Sure. So our product is targeting developers. And it happens to be, I used to be a developer, my co-founder used to be a developer. So it's fairly easy for us to reach out to protocols, even cold emailing or messaging people, or as Sakky just said, like there are Discords. People are very open. Everyone is in the building mode. So everyone wants to speak with others about new ideas. So we just message people and they usually respond.
Right. So you message them on different Discords
or Telegrams.
Right.
Video and remote work also makes this so much easier because you can be anywhere, that person can be anywhere. You don't need to ask them to go out for a coffee or something. You can just hop on a Zoom call and talk. Usually talking is better than messaging in my mind. So you can learn something from polls, but if you want to dig deeper, which in our case is important, we have calls.
Nice.
Yeah, just actually one thing to add about the asking your own community. I believe that you need to look at it a little bit with caution, because like that people are inside of your community doesn't mean that they're actually your users. Sometimes you have people who just are bag holders and they scream the loudest, and when you're asking them what kind of features you want or what kind of things you want in an application, they actually ask for things, but it doesn't mean that they're actually the ones that you should be targeting. And even asking for other communities or just people outside of actually your own, like let's say Discord and so, could provide way more value than just asking the people who are like loudest in your own Discord or in the poll or so. Then, yeah.
Absolutely. Plus, when you're early, you don't have a community. So the only way to ask anyone is to actually reach out to people outside.
But even if you do have the community, I think the healthiest way to approach it is by doing a mix of structured user research together with listening to your community. Because yeah, when you were talking about the community, I just kind of like had these vivid images in my mind about our community and the loudest people in it who are not our users but the backholders. And very often the community would actually volunteer their opinion and their research without you even asking. They would be like, hey, I want to see this feature, why don't you do this? And then you monitor the reactions of the other members of the community, and you kind of like, you can easily evaluate whether that's a viable idea or not. Sometimes the community will suggest something that makes a lot of sense to them, but makes zero sense from a business perspective. So it's gonna bring like zero value to you as a business. Because let's be honest, we're in it for the money. We're businesses. We're not NPOs or NGOs. So a healthy mix is required, but I think that you have to have, even though Sakky is very right about listening to your community and engaging with the community, I think we still need, we're early enough in the process that we need to have the structured approach, and we need to have like a more systematic way of doing user research.
I have like one short question or like follow-up question to that. Do you experience it when, let's say, you do user research or you reach out to your community that they and then let's say you make a certain change that is beneficial for them, that you get some reaction from the community back?
Yeah, you always get the reaction. You always get the reaction. The only problem is that the reaction only lasts for like 7 seconds, and that's that. They're like,
How does that manifest itself?
It's like, I mean, usually you share with the community, and like, because it's something that the community has been asking a lot, and you've made the change, and you really thought about it, yada yada yada, and then you do the marketing collateral to announce it, like you do a blog post and maybe an AMA, you have all the shiny graphics, whatever. And then you post all these things, and the community goes, yay, that's awesome. Now let's move on to the next topic. And you're kind of like, okay, I kind of wanted a little bit more praise, please, thank you. But it is the industry that we work with.
That's on product builders to not look at it as just incremental, we're just going to ship little bits out, but actually have a vision, have an outcome for where you want to go. And you can definitely tackle it and get some hype. But none of it's going to matter if you have no idea where you're going, because that will only last for so long. Eventually, it will come falling down.
No, I was kind of joking about the reaction, honestly, because like I just like to joke with the egos of people in Web3. Sorry about that. But no, the actual reaction that we should be monitoring, and this is what we do, is basically monitor if people are using that new feature. This is the only KPI that actually matters, like, because you can get like a bajillion likes on Twitter, but if people are not using the feature that you just shipped, well, sorry, you wasted your time. So this is the indicator that we use. We just monitor if people are using the new feature that we've just released. And the other thing is not just if they're using it, but also how they're using it. Because so often you ship a feature and you see people using it in a way that is like super different from the way that you intended it initially. Kind of like, Viagra, heart medication. Oh, there you go. Have a hard on for 4 hours.
And
so,
you always like put it into context with the actual, like, your long-term vision, your goal, etc.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, and actually, like a little thing to add to this, like there's one method is a Safari research. When actually what you do, you just like observe the behavior of your community and you observe the topics about what actually community talks without the hype. Then you don't create any artificial hype and you don't like bring like new feature what you're building or something, but you just observe what's actually happening and what kind of topics emerge and what kind of like information bubbles up. And then you just need one person who would spend like few hours a week do that, and then you can just capture this information that later could be translated to the new features, to the some shift in your project, and on actually building something what actually matter without putting too much effort in it.
How would you focus your attention? So because you're saying like you should assimilate the information without the hype and without looking at the hype, how would you like recommend focusing the attention on these things as so many like news come up and so many kind of reactive signals?
Yeah, you just need to separate, like, one of the things is just like separate what is the external hype of like when the people talk about like something what's happening in the space versus when they're talking about the actual product. And it helps like when you have a forum, when you have some like a longer format conversation, then it's a little bit easier to monitor. Of course, like Discord and so is a challenge, but you can work together with the community managers because they are the ones who are exposed the best. It's the same like in the Web2 world. You have this customer support, then they are the first who receive all the feedback. Then it's the same, you can treat your community managers for Discord and so, because they are the ones who see all the information first, and just providing them with the good guidelines and like how the signal could look like, and providing a space where they can just like in very simple manner just like post this, either as like a mirror board, either some sort of like a simple tool where they can capture these things and then later leave it for the team. They don't need to do anything else, neither analyze it, nothing. Just it can really help. And yeah, basically that's one of the ways.
And also, because
wants-
Roman mentioned
Oh,
that
no,
sometimes when you're starting out, you don't really have the community. You haven't built it yet. Just go and look into your competitors' communities. That's what we do as well, and look for the signals there, because that's like an even better way to front run your competition.
Right.
This is a great point. I actually wanted to make this. You can learn a lot in your competitions discords. Everything is public. So
Yeah, I would even like not like I don't call it competition anymore because it's not a like you're not competing anymore. You're just like everybody's just doing something, and you're just trying to find your unique like area of expertise.
I mean, it's quite peculiar, this Web3 space where everybody is a competitor, and also you collaborate with your competitors all the time, which actually makes a lot of sense. Like, for example, we would see we're facing an issue as a smart contract wallet and smart contract wallet signatures, for example, and we can't really solve it in a straightforward way. So we reach out to other smart wallets like Argent or Safe, and we work together with their teams to kind of like organize and work together. Or we're having, for example, problems getting our mobile app approved on the Apple Store. Again, we form a coalition, so to say, with other wallets that are struggling the same. So we have these Telegram groups on which we just share our experience and like tips and tricks. So it's fascinating.
That's actually an interesting segue to think about how the Web3 space can actually help transform the TradFi space or the Web2 space, because that is kind of probably the only competition there is. Do you have a sense of where and how, let's say, the projects in the ecosystem can evolve as opposed to, like mentioned earlier, central bank currencies or like Web2 startups that are still, very, very easy to use? Where do you see the trajectory of the future, let's say, in the next couple of years?
Well, it's my personal belief and opinion that for far too long we have been building technology-centric products, and we're finally transitioning to human-centric, and we're kind of like shifting the whole paradigm of development and design, and even marketing. So I think that this is what we're going to be focusing on. And while up until now we have been terrified of using Web 2 approaches and using anything that even remotely resembles a Web 2 principle in Web 3, because we had this air of like elitism and like we're better than everyone else. No, we're not. We still need the users. We still need the people. We still need the money to sustain our businesses.
Nice.
So I think that more and more companies in Web 3 are going to realize that and transition to a more human-centric design, to a more human-centric approach, and start with the user first. So build inside out rather than outside out. Because we have been thinking we're going to build it and they will come for so long. And yes, they come, but do they stay? Because that's the question that we need to ask. We're going to build it. They will come. How do we make them stay?
Makes sense. Yeah, thank you. I just want to be super mindful of time because we only have about a minute left. What's your opinion, Roman? What do you see in the future in the next year or so?
I see a bear market.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, that's good. We have another 20 seconds, Justina.
Yeah, I feel that just like space in general is like cleaning up now, and I'm really happy about this moment because the projects who just like copycats of one of each other, which is a bad usability, bad products in general, they're just like going away, and somebody who actually building something sustainable and proper, they're staying. Then I'm really happy to see this, and I hope to see in the next future.
Nice, thanks. And Sakky, you have the final word.
Yeah. This kind of stuff has happened before, and it will happen again. People compare to the internet and how that was adopted initially, and I'm sure there'll be the same lessons learned. What I hope to see, and I'm obviously going to be biased on this because this is what I talked about, but people should start to look at UX as a competitive advantage. If you look at it as just something that you need because your product has now been shipped and has product market fit, you will eventually lose out to somebody else who actually focused on it early enough and leveraged it. There's different ways that we can do that, onboarding people, retaining them, making them use it more. And design is coming up at a really interesting point. I've seen founding designer roles come out for startups now. So there's a really good opportunity to be like, okay, we're not just looking at it as a support function almost. It's like, this will actually give you an edge if you focus on it. So that's what I want to see more from the space. And especially in bear markets, like you said, Roman, if you get ahead of it and start leveraging it, when the people do come, you're ready.
Fantastic, amazing. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to talk to you and listen to your thoughts. That was an amazing conclusion to this. And thank you so much for listening as well. I wish you a wonderful day and see you soon.
Thanks, Roman, for the positive view for the next few years. Amazing. Is there someone that has questions? You can.
Oh, yeah.
We still have some time. Yeah, we can.
All
do
right,
Q&A.
okay.
Does someone have some questions?
Hey, can you hear me? Good. I have a bit of an anecdote. Like, I have two questions that you are not going to say to someone you just met. And for a woman, it's what's her age. For a man, it's what's his salary. My question is, how can you say that we want to move from like old banking stuff to decentralized stuff when all the data is available to everybody? I don't want other people to know what I bought, when, and and everything. Like, I think there's no privacy. How would you like encounter it or do something about it? Because I think it's like we cannot move to it until it's not fixed. We can use it to benefit from what it does now. But so yeah.
Roman, you-
I agree with you. We need to fix it, and there are products trying to fix this. We need privacy.
You can just refer to ZK privacy, something that a lot of projects are working on, zero knowledge proofs. And the other thing is, I think it's, I had a conversation about this with a coworker of mine who doesn't have an ENS domain name, duh. But he was like, he's just getting into that. So he's like, okay, so I checked your ENS domain and I see how much money you have on your wallet and like what you've done. And I have another coworker who judges people based on their Etherscan activity. So, you have this, I'm guessing this is what you're trying to avoid. But my point is there's a human factor here. You can literally choose and pick and choose what to display and what to keep private. Because at the end of the day, yes, you do have traceability. You have some anonymized data, and it is up to you how you have to be careful about linking your public identity to the wallets that you use. But that's the beauty of it. You can create a different wallet, and it takes a second. In Web3 and just fund it, and it's relatively easy to move money around. I mean, depending on gas fees, might be a little bit of a pain in the ass, but again, it's doable. You have at the end of the day, it boils down to the choice that you make. As an individual, as a private and a public person, was the data that I want to put on the blockchain that is identifiable? That makes it easy for people to understand that, yes, this is Vanina's wallet and this is what she's done with it. And what's the information that I would like to keep private.
Thanks.
One point, we've talked about how like it can be your behavior and you'll drive it and it's your control. We don't know what products are going to be built as well, so that something could come around that then creates a new social dynamic and a new social norm. You might have said 5 years ago, why the hell would I want someone to see exactly what I'm doing right now? And then Be Real comes around and it blows up. You don't know how it might play out. So while you might say, oh, I don't want everyone's transactions to be seen, or I don't want my transactions to be seen, what if someone creates something around sharing your transactions and sharing to people what you do with it? We don't know the like possibilities with that product. So definitely how you might look at the behavior right now is on like just on paper, what is it? Yeah, I don't like it. But then all it takes is someone to come around and create something interesting for it. And then you might see some people start using it in an interesting way, like NFTs and wallets and what passes you've been to. Back in the day, might be like, oh, I don't want people to know what events and concerts I go to. And now it's like, oh, you can share it and put it up. And it just takes someone to build something interesting, and then people could jump on board. So you never know what could come across. I think Be Real is a good example. Like, I'm one of the people that would be like, why on earth would I want someone to know what I'm doing at this exact moment? That's outrageous. But millions of people use it, and you never know. No one could have predicted that and where it was going to go. And you might have the same thing with things that are on chain.
Nice.
Hey, excuse me. So in the DeFi space, there's lots of teams that are very software heavy, that they come from a software background and they stumble quite a bit when it comes to UX and sort of don't really know how to tackle it. So do you have any advice on how a software heavy dev team can upskill in UX and really tackle these problems?
Work with your marketing people. As a marketer and as somebody who has the privilege to work with a software team that is very holistic, we have a very holistic approach to the whole product development part of things. It is super important for marketers to work with developers and also for developers to work with marketers and designers as well. I kind of consider the design team part of the marketing and sales teams. So just work with them and make sure that, because these are the people who will convey the data from the users to you. These are the people who have the touch point between the customer and the developers. The developers are usually on like different developer communities and message boards and discords, and they will not be talking to the regular user, like to the everyday user. So just talk to your marketing teams and make sure to like just get as much information as possible from them, because as marketers, it is quite often our job to translate developer language to human readable language to human, but the other direction should be present as well. So we should be translating what the audience is saying, what the potential users are saying to us. We should be able to translate that into features that developers should create, and also features that they should scrap.
I want to just be mindful of time. I think Sakky, you wanted to say something.
I signaled. Are you a dev? Okay, cool. So some actionable advice for you if you don't have a designer, if you even don't have a marketer. Take 3 products, maybe your competitors, take another product, copy out bits of each, and then you've got something completely new. Literally just copy, but copy from a few different ones. Just start by doing that. You don't have to rely on anybody else. If you just start by copying a few different ones, you will create something new. This is what we do when we do product research as designers. We'll look at like 5 or 6 different products. And then when you actually take components of each, voila, you've got something new and amazing. You can do the same thing. Just start by seeing what others have done and then just take a little bit of each and you'll find some magic there.
Great. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, just a little thing to add also, like actually to the same approach. Then like later when you build something, just like invite 2-3 people and just like do a call for like 40 minutes or so and just like let them to use your product. Even if it's like just a prototype, even if it's something which is very bootstrap, just see how they use it, how they interact with it. You don't even need to ask any questions. Just like see what kind of problems they face and you will learn so much.
Fantastic. Thank you.
By the way, also, if you feel like you have other things to do, feel free to just stand up and leave. We're just kind of simmering out that conversation. But also, if you have
faces, though,
we still have enough time. So if you have any questions, please raise your hand over there. Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, we were earlier. You were before. Yeah, go.
Sorry. Hi there. Thank you very much for all of your comments. I enjoyed them all, even the ones I disagreed with. I've been thinking quite a bit about standards recently, and it strikes me that a lot of the UX problems in crypto are due to the fact that there are lots of different pieces of software, on-chain, off-chain, hardware wallets, software wallets, browsers, Etherscan, that all need to interact in rather subtle and path-dependent and then cause emergent behaviors. There are some standards that we have, like signed type data, to make the wallet experience slightly better when you submit from a dApp. Are there any other obvious areas that have struck you as annoying that we should be standardizing on more? One thing that occurs to me is error messages, for instance. It's a completely broken part of dApp development right now. Is there anything else that you think, in your experience as designers, that strikes you as a particularly vivid example of where standardization could help?
The one thing that drives me crazy is the thing that you mentioned, human readable transaction parsing, and the fact that most dApps don't do that. I'm very sorry. You know, I know that I'm not a developer. I'm not a software engineer. I'm a marketer, and also because I'm a marketer in school, I took English and German, and now I'm learning Spanish. But I never took the time to learn hex. So when a wallet or a dApp spits up a blob of hex for me to sign, I'm at a loss. So this is something that we should be working on, like even for people who are deep into crypto, like neck deep into crypto. Why are we over-engineering and over-complicating things when we can just literally display an error message that tells the user what's happening? This is the one thing that we should really focus on.
And over time, I think as you do these things, you'll learn what resonates with people, because you might have multiple assumptions on what that hex code is supposed to represent, or like, how do you call it now? Seed phrase, passphrase? Like, you don't know. You just try it, and then over time,
You get a stuck transaction in MetaMask, and you get a message replace nonce.
right. Yeah.
And then you say you just started with crypto like
Something
a few
different.
weeks ago, and you go again. Excuse my language, but what the fuck is nonce? How do I replace it? Like, do I replace it with another nonce, or do I replace it with a kernel or something else made up? Like, you don't know.
It didn't sound like you're saying nouns, by the way. It sounded like you're saying something else.
Sorry.
Devs come in early. Devs have a focus on technical feasibility, experience, marketing, sales, that kind of communication of people maybe who are a bit more soft skill led comes in a bit later. I think that's just the reality of the situation. We're in like a build mode, but the world today, digital products wise, is not just in build mode; it's in use mode, and that's kind of the difference you have. The other point I'll say, answering your question, is, Roman, what you guys did at Argent is like, what on earth? Why do I have to connect a wallet to sign up? This is ridiculous. It's a bank account. It's actually a bank account. It stores money, and it's a bank account with like way less steps to maintain, let alone create. There definitely needs to be better solutions for it. I was pleasantly surprised when I used Argent. I actually talked about it in my talk of how they integrate familiar logins in Web 2 and hide the complexity. Like, what is that? It's just, I think the space has maybe been dominated by technical people for too long, and that's fine. That's normal. It's an evolution. And now it's like, okay, cool, great tech. How do we now push this to a bunch of people easily? Maybe it's that iPhone moment. Maybe you need a Steve Jobs or maybe you need multiple Steve Jobs. And also the ladies, Steph Jobs as well, to actually communicate it to people, because the tech's great, but let's actually create something that people will use.
We can all be Steve Jobs now.
Yeah, and I think like in general, like,
Centralized Steve Jobs.
yeah, just like Web3 space need to move on a little bit outside from this cultish thing, because when it started, it was like a small group. Let's have our own language and our own terminology because it's cool and it's something that others don't understand. But we need to ditch this mindset and just like, if we want to build for the world, then we need to just like let them understand what we're building and just change terminology, make it like more human readable, more human understandable. And it includes like all parts of crypto.
Look at what Reddit did. Reddit killed it with their NFT sale, and they did not use the word NFT once in their entire campaign. They kept calling it avatars. They did not talk about wallets or blockchain or anything. They used Polygon a couple of times, but they focused the narrative around selling avatars, keeping your avatars in your vault. That's what we need to be doing. We need to be speaking a language that is familiar and gives people the sense of security.
I'll say one thing to add and close on it is, I think Web 2.5 is going to be an interesting gateway, because Web 3 went full degenerate 150 million times, and Web 2 is fully centralized, should we say, and a good gateway for adopting and leveraging blockchain tech is going to be incumbents in Web 2 moving into the space. You've seen Reddit do it. Nike have done something similar now with Polygon as well. Again, if you go on store.nike.com or something, whatever it's called, there's not a single mention of some of these technical terms, because as soon as you add, like, there's almost a tipping point for technical terms. They'll be like, what is this? I'm scared. And that's going to completely put off people.
I think that's a great point, because we're not trying to, as you've mentioned before as well, we're not trying to like disrupt the entire world and industry and bring people into something completely new. It's more like at every stage of the line, we're just hand-holding people and hand-holding the like Web 2 companies into something that's slightly better.
The diehards have been trying to completely revolutionize it, and now you've got other people coming in to build. So it's a balance. There'll be a balance between security and usability. At points, it's been so skewed on security and fully decentralized, and usability is you could say, fully centralized with Web 2 right now. So we'll come to a middle point.
Yeah. Sorry, do you have still a question? Oh, yeah.
One can answer it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, it was also about the standards. Like, I'm a UX researcher and designer. I've been working in the Web3 space for a year. And something that really surprised me is that as UX collective, working in this space, there are not real standards on basic usability, on basic UX patterns. And people are kind of copying and pasting successful use cases that work really well on hype. But now that we're seeing, bear market, these patterns, they don't work. Like, they're not successful and they are being copy pasted. So I think there's kind of like a great opportunity to define what is the quality that Web3 products should have, some of these patterns, at least in my opinion, and I kind of want to see or hear your thoughts on it.
Does anybody? I have an opinion on that. I think that one of the most fundamental changes we'll see in the next couple of years in any domain is that there will not be any standards anymore, because technology and the innovation is becoming so accessible and fast, and it's easy to develop an application. It's easy to do user research. It's easy to do design as long as you have the internet. That it's almost like you just focus on your own target audience and you define the standard for your own target audience. And because you're doing constantly user research, it keeps evolving over time. So I think there's going to be some exciting times where we'll see like weirdly shaped screens and really interesting ways of interacting with mobile phones or anything really, that it offers a lot of opportunity for creativity rather than centralized standards at all.
And something to add to this, and I think we need to focus not on the standards. Like, I agree with Andrej that like it's kind of going outside of this concept of a standard, but we need to just have a list of practices and actually share these practices with people, how to do research, how to do UX design, and just like a guidelines, what kind of like a recipe for that. And it would help, and it's also like something which is like a lowest hanging fruit to teach teams how to do these little things on their own, versus just like trying to get us as a researchers to like in every team, and just like, of course it would be ideal to have a researcher in every like DeFi protocol or any like crypto application, but it's just not realistic in any like close time. Then it's just something like providing these practices, we can just like educate more people and just like build collectively nicer and better usable design.
Right. Okay.
Sorry, I know we're running out of time, but we should probably organize this, just a call to action to all of you. Reach out to me after the event if you want. We can organize together, like do a collective to set together, like to put in practice a methodology for like user testing and stuff.
Cool. That was a nice prompt and a call to action at the end of this panel. Thank you so much. It was delightful. Have a wonderful rest of the day.